What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bracket Busters. I know it's been a hot minute here. It's been just truly a crazy last couple of weeks going on, so haven't got much up on the website and haven't got much out here on YouTube. But just wanted to start off today, first of all, by saying if you haven't yet, get to Home Field and get your new Evansville Aces hat. I'm not sponsored, but I might as well be sponsored because their merchandise is freaking phenomenal anyway. So perfect Father's Day hats for people out there. This dad hat right here came in time for the Evansville Aces Super Regional. So for those of you who out there, missing out on some good merch from Home Field, just saying, okay, anyway, all right, let's get into what this video is going to actually be about. So in another offseason review, we are going to be talking about the Duquesne Dukes. We're going to see if they can continue the magic from last year's run. As you all remember, this was a team that had what you could say a roller coaster ride of a season. They went down to the point of thinking that they would be bottom 5 teams in the A10 to all the way back up to, winning the A10 tournament, going to the NCAA Tournament, and beating BYU in the first round. So, phenomenal season. They're coming off back-to-back 20-plus win seasons. They went 25-12 last year. So this is a team that's been building a lot of success. They just really haven't, I know they had a lot of success last season, but they have not consistently had that every year. The year prior was kind of the same way, where they were projected to finish higher than they did, and there's just some disappointing stretches in the season. So I think the Duquesne Dukes can be looking to really build off that and try to avoid those types of, kind of intermittent runs where all of a sudden, you drop 5 in a row, and then you're killing your chances for any type of at-large bid. You're killing your chances for the A10 in general. Last season, the Dukes were a veteran team. The roster turnover has shown that. 7 players have run out of eligibility. Dru Joyce is going to be in his first year in the head coach. He was the associate head coach. So phenomenal job that he's done so far here in the portal. He's been going after also a lot of older guys, but also kind of mixing in some others in there as well. So I really think what he's building up here is going to be a potential another run in the A10 next season. So what I normally do next is run through the roster overview, but my God, there is just too many players, and you're going to sit here and listen to me rip off names and stats that you're not going to remember for the next 5 minutes. So instead, I'm going to try to make a Canva picture, and I'm going to just put that up on this video for like 2 minutes and kind of run through some of the key highlights instead of running through every single one of these people. So in terms of returning players, their best player is going to be David Dixon. He averaged 7.2 points, 4.8 rebounds last season for the Dukes. Kareem Rozier is coming back as well. He had 5.2 points, 1.8 rebounds, 2.4 assists. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about him later. Phenomenal story, but Jake Michelle, he's also coming back. He's averaging 6.4 points, 2.5 rebounds, 1 assist. They got some other guys coming in back as well that were nice players coming in off rotation who could be, again, nice rotation pieces next season. In terms of who they have added in portal, been some phenomenal guys. I will run through some of these more in depth. Trey Dinkins is a junior coming out of Canisius. He averaged 15.4 points, 2.7 rebounds, 3.6 assists per game. Cam Crawford, he's a sophomore coming out of Marshall, 8.2 points, 2.4 rebounds, 1.4 assists. Deshaun Corbett, he's a junior coming out of Chicago State, averaged 15.4, 7.7, 1.6. Alex Williams is a sophomore coming out of Furman, 13.2 points, 4.8 rebounds, 1 assist. Maximus Edwards, sophomore out of George Washington. Ooh, little interconference transfer. 12.4 points, 6.6 rebounds, 1.2 assists. Elijah Wilborn, freshman coming out of St. Francis, PA. And man, am I excited about this one for the Dukes. 10.8 points, 7.4 rebounds, 1.7 assists. And last but not least, Brandon Hall, sophomore coming out of Howard College, which is JUCO. And at JUCO, he averaged 16.4, 4.2, and 2.9 assists per game. They have just literally one freshman coming in, Dom Akins. That's it. And then in terms of players they lost, again, this number is freaking massive. They only lost two people in the transfer portal. One was Andy Barbara. They have not committed yet. And then Kaylon Nichols committed to Northern Illinois. Combined between the two, with just 14 games appeared in last season. In terms of the major pieces they lost, obviously they lost A.J. Grant, Jimmy Clark III. It was the dynamic duo that led the way for the Dukes going into the March Madness tournament and leading to their upset win over BYU. They also lost a lot of other key rotation pieces. Again, I'm not going to rip through every single one of these because unfortunately they're all run up eligibility, and I'll just display them on your screen here for a second. So, kind of just taking a step back here, needless to say, there's been a lot of significant turnover for the Dukes this season. Transfer portal It hasn't picked them apart, though. That's great. What we're seeing with a lot of these other mid-majors, some of these other videos I've done where these teams have just gotten completely dismantled. So for them, fortunately, the portal isn't tearing them apart. However, the ineligible veterans is tearing them apart. They were an older team last season. Just 3 of their top 10 scorers can be returning from into this coming year. So the Dukes, they kind of had to dig deep into the portal. It was pretty much going to be their only option. So, like I mentioned, losing Jimmy Clark, Day Grant, that is massive shoes to fill. I mean, you're talking about 2 guys that's probably going to go to the NBA, at least at the very least the G League, and play. They were a dynamic duo. I mean, hands down the reason why Duquesne was able to go on the run at the end of the year that they were. So, losing those 2, real detrimental. However, some of these pieces that they picked up are super intriguing to the point where it's like, wow, yeah, you're going to miss Day Grant, you're going to miss Jimmy Clark III, but some of these guys are going to come in and just be amazing players immediately because Joyce went in and got some of these older players. Yeah, they got a couple sophomores, a couple freshmen, but a lot of these guys have played at least 2 seasons. So coming in with that level of experience, they're going to be able to just pick up and immediately contribute to this team. It's not like you're picking up a bunch of freshmen and you don't really know you got to develop them and all that stuff. Like, these are guys who have shown at a Division I level that they can come in and they can contribute immediately. So let's just kind of start off here. Let's start off with Trey Dinkins. He was highly sought after. He was impressive second year at Canisius. He shot 41% overall, 36.5% from 3. Again, he averaged 15.4 points, 2.7 rebounds, 3.6 assists, and 1 steal per game. He had some monster games, man. He had 30-point performance against Rider. Against some of the tougher competition, he scored 17 points against Syracuse, 15 against Pitt, 25 against High Point. This dude is a scoring machine. So again, that's where I'm kind of coming here is saying, like, okay, yeah, you lost Day Grant, you lost Jimmy Clark III, but you picked up a lot of scores here because Jayshawn Corbett is also similar. He's a scoring machine. And plus, he's 6'7", so his body gives him an advantage as a skilled rebounder as well. One of his best games last season actually came against Duquesne, where he posted 21 points, 11 rebounds, and 3 assists. Against Northwestern, in which, surely, if you're watching this, you're probably a diehard college basketball fan. You remember that they actually picked up their first AP Top 25 win ever in school history. They defeated Northwestern, and in that game, he finished with 17 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals. Out of 32 games this season, he finished with less than double-digit points just 6 times. He boasted 4 double-doubles and 1 triple-double. So, again, you're talking about Day Grant, Jimmy Clark III leaving, but you're getting people like Dinkins and Corbett coming in here who's going to help pick up that void. And obviously, it's going to be really hard to replace those 2. However, these aren't the only 2 guys that they just picked up in the portal. These are the 2 who I'd say the main guys that they picked up in the portal. But, you're surrounding them with other pieces I'm about to discuss here. Legitimately, this could be a better Dukes team than we even saw last year. So that was picked up Cameron Crawford, transferred to Marshall. He actually, this was his sophomore year. He actually started out at Indiana State his freshman season. He showed signs of being a skilled scorer. He posted 23 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists against South Alabama, 20 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists against Duquesne. Again, this is now the second guy who they picked up in the portal who kind of went off against them for their opponent whenever Duquesne was playing them last season. So the key thing here is he only averaged 8.2 points, 2.4 rebounds, 1.4 assists. However, he only averaged 17.6 minutes per game. That's a pretty impressive stat line for that amount of time you're playing in each game. He's got some nice size for a guard. He's 6'5", so I'm sure they would love to see him improve in the three-point shooting side, though. He averaged 31.5% from 3, so it's not bad. Don't get me wrong. It's not terrible. However, I'm sure that they would like to see him take a step forward there. I think for Crawford, the skill is there, obviously. He was averaging quite a bit. He had some nice stat lines in what was minimal playing time, comparatively to what you would see as a normal starter. And he does have some nice size at shooting guard position. So I'm curious to see if he can take that step forward this year. I doubt he's going to start. I see him more as like a rotation piece here, but still averaging, probably giving you 20 plus minutes a game, for in that kind of like, 6th or 7th man coming off the bench. So I am really curious to see if he can take that step forward. But again, building off the piece of just building out an insane scoring team, Alex Williams, he shot 43.8% overall and nearly 40% from beyond the arc. So another caveat here is he kind of disappeared the last 6 games of the season, but But so we're going to kind of take those statistics out because I want to show you what he did for the rest of the year. So prior to his last 6 games of the year, he averaged 15.7 points per game in those previous 19 games. Some of his best performances included 23.7 rebounds, 2 assists game against Tulane, and 26 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists against Citadel. So, you kind of maybe question that because obviously he had a pretty rough stretch at the end of the season. However, the key piece to remember here is this is a skilled scorer yet again who, maybe he's a little bit more streaky, but however, again, he was averaging 15.7 points pretty much the majority of the season until he kind of fell apart at the end of the year. So if you can rekindle that and you can bring that in coming into next season, so, he shot 40% from beyond the arc and 43.8% with those games included. So you're talking about a skilled scorer who is, again, going to be another piece to help replace losing Clark and Grant. This is a tremendous job so far that Joyce has done here in the portal. They also picked up the JUCO transfer. They picked up Brandon Hall out of Howard College and high school senior Dom Akins. Akins is going to come in at a similar role. He's 5'8", very undersized. He only had one other offer from Youngstown State. However, I'm going to give this guy major credits because, he was doing some monster numbers in high school. So, it's kind of one of those things where you see 5'8", and you're like, oh, that's not Division I, but that's not true. There's been plenty of guys who've been undersized, underneath 6 foot, coming into Division I and contribute. I do think Akins can contribute to some degree. I don't see how he breaks this rotation at all in his freshman year. So what I hope he sticks around. He's close by. He's grew up not too far from there. I hope that he sticks around on the team. I think he's going to be a great asset for them down the road if they can develop him and he can step up his game even further and get used to getting into Division I. But this is another case of the Duquesne Dukes going to have a little bit of an older team where younger guys probably aren't going to get to play as much. Brandon Hall, he averaged 16.4 points, 4.2 rebounds, and 2.9 assists in 18 games for Howard College. He was actually originally a member of ETSU as a freshman. He redshirted, so he did not play. So he ended up transferring to Howard College. He had some nice mid-major offers. He had UIC, Tarleton State, St. Peter's, and Duquesne. So, no mid-majors to really snub at. And it's one of those things where you don't really 100% always know what you're going to get out of a JUCO guy. However, he obviously was a skilled scorer in JUCO, so very easily could come in and, again, contribute off the bench in a meaningful rotation, position. So let's start diving into some of these guys that were added a little bit later in the portal. They picked up Maximus Edwards. He's 6'5" guard. He spent his first 2 seasons at George Washington. As a freshman, he kind of provided an immediate impact. So as a freshman, he averaged 10.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, 1.4 assists, and 33.8 minutes per game. So he's averaging that as a freshman. And then his sophomore year got even better. Took a step forward. He averaged 12.4 points, 6.6 rebounds, 1.2 assists, and 28 minutes per game. He's a perfect fit as a small forward, as his size and his rebound ability gives him an upper hand in the lineup. He shot nearly identical in his first 2 seasons as well. He did not take a step back, or, he already shot impressive as a freshman, then he just continued to do that as well in his sophomore season. He shot 42.7% overall and 35.8% from beyond the arc. So again, he's got nice size. Yes, he could arguably be a little bit undersized at the small forward position against some other talent. However, I think being in that, shooting guard, small forward position for him is going to be amazing. Because he kind of goes in with, Corbett, right? So, Corbett's going to fit more into that small forward position. So, when you have Edwards and him on the floor at the same point in time, you can play each other off that. So, you're going to... Just looking at this rotation, I don't even know how Joyce is going to set this up because he's got so many guys that can just go out there and score. It's seriously insane. Because I'm about to get into another couple people here that we're going to talk about, but it's just regardless, really impressive job he's done so far. This is going to be Duke's team that scores a lot of points. I highlighted this earlier, but I think, in my opinion, the most underrated pick, though, I'm talking about all scoring, right? I'm talking about guards. I'm talking about Corbett, he's 6'7". I'm not really talking about any height that they picked up here. But Eli Wilborn is going to be an underrated pickup for these Dukes. And let me just talk a little bit about why. Because this is probably a guy that a lot of people haven't really heard of. He's coming out of a pretty small college. He dominated his freshman year at St. Francis. He averaged 10.8 points, 7.4 rebounds, 1.7 assists, and 1.6 blocks per game. So he's listed as 6'8", 215, so he's not your typical 6'10", 6'11 big man. But it gives him excellent size on a Dukes team that is rather undersized. Because if you remember here, they picked up mostly guards. You're talking guys that are 6'5 or under. Corbett's 6'7", But this guy's going to come in. He's coming in at 6'8". He's going to be one of the bigger guys on the team. He's going to have to play the 5. So why I love him so much is he shot 54% from the floor. This is a guy, as a freshman, who contributed, had an amazing year, started for St. Francis, and can finish around the rim and alter shots around the rim. You know, a lot of teams don't have those types of guys, and that's what kills them. You know, when you have guys that can just drive in the paint, you don't have anybody down low that can actually defend that. This is a guy that's going to alter games on the defensive end for Duquesne. So this is exactly what they needed to complement a lot of these guys that are picking up that are mostly shooting guards or small forwards or point guards. Like, these guys are going to score, so having someone like Wilborn down low to take that pressure off your scorers is going to be tremendous, because obviously Wilborn can finish around the rim. Now, let's, give some credit where credit's due here, but St. Francis obviously played in a much smaller league compared to the powerhouse that the A10 is in terms of mid-majors. So there is that risk that maybe Wilborn will, have to adjust to that a little bit, but very clearly the talent's there. So this is a tremendous pickup for Joyce. I think this is personally my favorite underrated pick, because a lot of the other guys were being looked at from other schools. They were going to be highly regarded. They were going to be, wanted by many teams. So that's what I'm pumped to see this. So, kind of ending this segment about talking about the roster, I want to take just a moment and highlight Jake DeMichelle. So, this guy has an amazing story. He was a walk-on to start his freshman year. And then, walk-ons typically don't play. However, he's immediately provided a spark for this team. He finished the season. He played in 30 games, including 21 starts. He averaged 6.4 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 1 assist per game. He shot 46% from the floor. This is the type of guy you want on your team coming off the bench. This is a guy that the guys can rally around. He's a great story. He's a walk-on. He got his scholarship offer this coming into this next year. So, they did him right by saying, like, hey, you did so much your freshman year as a walk-on. We're going to give you a scholarship. Because very clearly he can play there. So I just want to say, Jake, if you're watching this or you hear this or you see the article somewhere, congratulations, man. Your story is important for a lot of people out there, and I'm excited to watch you take another step forward coming up in this next season, and I think your team's going to be special. So I just kind of wanted to take a minute here and highlight that's really a phenomenal story, and this is why a lot of kids, whenever people choose to be walk-on, get overlooked, but guys like this are the reason why they do it. There's always chances for people like this to come through and kind of shine in situations and, finally get the recognition that they deserve. So congratulations to that. So now we kind of talked about the roster. Let's talk about preseason expectations. So the A10 it's always been one of the best mid-major conferences in the entire country. Usually those top ones are Mountain West, which you can argue is not a mid-major anymore. Then you got the A10, you got the American, you got the AAC, you got the Missouri Valley, and the those are kind of like your main three, and then obviously you can argue like the WCC being a mid-major as well, and plus two, WCC just like Grand Canyon and Seattle. So you're talking about those four kind of being like your main mid-majors. So A10's always been one of the better ones in the country. They should be a multi-bid league next year, bearing any just disastrous non-conference from some of the teams that you don't need that from. And I think hiring Dru Joyce to come in and take over for Keith Ambert after his retirement is amazing. I think the players, the fans, the donors, they all loved Keith. So having them bring in Joyce to kind of just essentially, it's like Keith's not even gone. Joyce is coming in. He had already been there for a couple of years. So coming in and just immediately picking up pretty much where Keith left off. And again, there was a lot of roster turnover, but seeing what Joyce has done in the portal is significantly impressive. So I think he's going to be able to keep that momentum going forward and set himself up for another winning season. In fact, his first winning season as head coach. They're going to be an offensive juggernaut. So you got Dinkins, Crawford, Corbett, Williams, and Hall, all to go with the returning pieces. So I'll personally be stunned if Duquesne averages less than 80 points a game next year. I think it's going to be freaking insane. Last year they had Grant and Clark, and they were the Duke's go-to guy. So if you needed a bucket, you handed it off to them. They did their own thing, right? This year you got 3 or 5 different options. You got Dinkins, he shot 41% overall, 36.5 from 3. Crawford shot 37.2%, 52% his freshman year. Let's add that. So he did take a major step back, but hey, you can rekindle the fire from your freshman year. He had Corbett shot nearly 46%, Williams shot 43% and 40% from 3, and then Hall shot 42% in JUCO. You're talking about 3 to 5 guys here who could be your bucket getters, the guys that you hand off the ball. And what that does is you have multiple options on the floor. So, it's not like a lot of teams where you only have one, maybe two guys, but mostly just one guy who's clearly above average in terms of, like, we're talking about mid-major series. So we're talking about somebody who's going to get ate up by a power school next year. So you're talking about, you usually only have, like, one of those guys, and what happens is defense smothers them because they know that's the guy, and they're going to force the other guys to step up. Well, what happens when you have all these different options is you can pass the ball around. So you have different options. You got, multiple guys that can shoot a three. You got Wilborn down low. You got all these different options, and, it's just, they're going to be an offensive juggernaut. Three-point shooting is going to concern me a little bit. Crawford, Corbett, and Hall, they didn't post stellar numbers from beyond the arc, but Dinkins is a pretty solid three-point shooter. Williams is excellent. And having those two on floors, you're going to open up the opportunities for others like Corbett, Crawford, Hall to score in the paint, driving, hit a little mid-range jumper. I do think that when Dinkins and Williams are out of that game, that's why I was hinting when I was talking about a lot of this, like, roster changes, like some of these guys like Crawford, we need to see them take their three-point shooting to the next level. That way, when those two are out of the game, you can continue to have somebody on the floor that can hit the shot from beyond the arc. So, I know I've talked a lot about Wilburn, but my largest concern is still at the front court. He is going to provide a significant presence down low. There's not a single doubt about that. And he's the only player that's coming in that's played significant minutes at this position. So, as a freshman, he averaged 25.6 minutes per game through 30 games. Their other options at power forward center are Matus Hronsky, if we're going to go with that, David Dixon, and Hello Bari. So, Bar, it's got to be Bar. Bar and Dixon, they're the tallest. They're both 6'9", while Hronsky and Wilburn line up at 6'7", 6'8". So Dixon did appear in 37 games for the Dukes last season, and he averaged 19.8 minutes per game. So shot the ball pretty well, shot 54.3%. He disrupted a lot of shots, he averaged 1.6 blocks per game, and nearly one steal. So solid defensive presence. So you pretty much, you're going to have him, and you're going to have Wilburn coming in here and saying, like, you're the two big men. My fear is, what do you do after them? So, Hronsky and Barr have not played in elevated roles whatsoever. Hronsky appeared in 24 games, but he averaged just 7 minutes per game. Barr appeared in 32 games, but he averaged just 8.3 minutes. So, you have two potential starters, right? You got the starter in David Dixon, and you got the starter in Wilburn. So, what do you do, though, if one of those guys gets hurt? Or what do you do if one of them gets in foul trouble? You got to throw in one of these other guys who really hasn't played a whole lot. So you're kind of risking it because it's one of those things where this is going to be a high-octane offense. Like, you're going to score a lot of points per game. You got a lot of scores on that team. But let's face it, when one of those guys is out, the other team could just eat you in the paint. So that's my biggest fear, and I really don't know. I'm probably making this sound way worse than it probably is going to be. Because it's like one of those things where, yeah, on paper it doesn't look great, but I think the other things will outshine it. I think you'll have your moments, essentially, where, like, you're going to get killed in the paint. You're going to get ate up because, Wilburn gets in foul trouble or Dixon gets in foul trouble, and you got to throw some of these other guys out there. Like, yeah, you're going to have that risk, but what your hope is other guys can step up. Corbett is still 6'7", so, worst case scenario, you can just run a really small lineup out there. I think that, that is just the biggest weak spot for this team next season. So, again, I think they're going to be a high-octane offense. I think realistically this team's going to win games, scores like 85-80, 87-78. They're going to give up a ton of points. I do think that it may be I'm wrong because some of these guys, they had some nice steal numbers, nice blocks. Again, I like the presence down low. It's just a little bit stretched thin. So maybe the defense steps up even more than I'm imagining. But what I do see is, like, they're going to score a lot of points per game. They're going to score probably 75, 80, 85 points per game. And, I don't think that's doom and gloom, though, in terms of the lack of paint, because I do think this offense is going to score more. A lot of teams won't be able to keep up with that, even if they are taking advantage of maybe, not a significant presence down low whenever some of those guys are out. So my projection for the season is I think the Dukes are going to easily win 23-plus games. I think their offense alone is going to propel them to at least 20-plus wins. So I think they're going to keep that streak alive. I think they're going to go for year 3 in terms of winning 20-plus games per season. I can see them as maybe a top 6, top 7 finish in the A10. The A10 is going to be, insane next year. Obviously, St. Louis was in the bottom of the pit last year. And then, Schertz has them coming up. They're going to be a fantastic team next season. I think there's going to be a lot of good teams. I think, personally, I would love a top 6 finish for the Dukes. It's always an excellent conference. It's not going to be a walk in the park, but I think Dru Joyce has combined the talent from the transfer portal that he's gotten with some of the key rotation pieces that he already had on roster to make a significant run in this A10 tournament and A10 conference next year. Do I think they're going to win the A10? No. Do I think that they can knock off some of the top teams in the A10? Absolutely. And I hope that we see Duquesne, make it into the postseason again somehow. Because I really do think, this team could be better than I even think. I'm kind of putting an emphasis on I don't think the defense is going to be great, but I'm just some guy who, and we haven't even seen them practice yet. We haven't seen them play a single game together. That defense could be way better than we're even imagining, but I'm putting a lot of stock into the Duquesne Dukes next season, and I think they're going to be a really fun team to watch. So, thank you all for joining me today, and let's go Dukes. What's going on, guys? I just also want to plug here that we are running a promotion through Bracket Busters. So if you actually go down into the link below into our Substack, you'll see on all of our articles that we actually post that if you use the code Bracket Busters, as with both B's capitalized, when checking out at Crow's Nest Coffee Roasters online, which the link will also be down below, you will receive 10% off your order. Also, highly recommend overall that you go to our Substack and subscribe to our newsletters. They are our primary source of how you get information from us. We are starting to explore a little bit more into the video space here on YouTube and other channels. And I recommend that you go to Substack. That's always going to be the first place that we post our new media. So if you're a fan of college basketball, if you're a fan of mid-majors, go to Substack, check us out, give us a subscribe button. I would super appreciate it. Thank you all.